Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Jan, please just check whether Mr. Punia has logged in or not. Then we'll start off.
Sure, sir. I'm just checking. He already logged in, so I'm just checking whether he reached office or not. Just.
Yeah.
Okay. Jyoti, has he logged in? I think we should start.
Yes, sir. Punia sir joined.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, all.
Good
Welcome,
morning,
sir.
and
Hello, good
welcome,
morning.
Mr. Punia.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Good
may I
morning,
have
sir.
everyone's permission to start off?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hemant Sharma, Principal Secretary, Industries Department and Chairman, EPCOL and IDCO, Government of Odisha. Mr. Jayant Singh, IRTS, Vice Chairman, Inland Waterways Authority of India, Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Government of India. Mr. Manoj Kumar Mishra, IRTS, CRC and Special Secretary, Commerce and Transport Department, Government of Odisha. Mr. Bhupinder Singh Punia, IAS, Additional Secretary, Department of Industries and Managing Director, EPCOL and IDCO, Government of Odisha. Mr. CL Shah, IRTS, General Manager, Transportation and Economics, Rights Limited, Government of India. Ms. Annie Srivastava, Assistant Manager, Transport and Economics Division, Rights Limited, Government of India. Mr. Pankaj Satija, Member, Code and Advisory Committee and Convener, ICC Minerals and Metals Committee, and MD of Tata Steel Mining Limited. Mr. Ajay Kumar Behra, IRTS Member, Core Advisory Committee and Convener of this very important committee, and Office Railway. Mr. Santosh Kumar Mahapatra, IS retired, Member, Core Advisory Committee and mentor. In fact, he is the chief driver of this particular project. And he was also the former chairman of Paradip Port and CEO cum director of Dhamra and Gilinjan Ports. Mr. Rajesh Roy Chaudhary, member of ICC Odisha Industrial Logistics Committee and a very important member of this particular committee. And he's also the managing director of Architechno Consultants Private Limited. Good morning and welcome.
Morning.
Rivers have functioned as useful waterways throughout history, transporting people and goods over large distances. Many countries still rely significantly on inland water transport, particularly for heavy and bulky freight, because it's cheaper, more reliable, and less polluting than road or rail transportation. In India, products are still transported via clogged roads and rail networks, showing cargo movement, creating uncertainty and raising trade prices. The Ganga River was a major waterway in the pre-independence period, about 100 years ago. However, cargo growth through inland waterways has been slow in post-independent India due to lack of infrastructure, a lack of legislative incentives, low channel depth, and a drop in the number of vessels, among other factors. One of the reasons for the delayed growth of water transport in India is a lack of key infrastructure, such as cargo ports and jetties. India is yet to develop this less expensive and environmentally friendly means of transportation in In India, logistics expenditures are projected to account for 18% of GDP, with transportation and warehousing accounting for the majority of this. There's no continuous link in the inland waterway network. It will be necessary to build a multimodal network that includes water bodies and roadways, as well as culverts, bridges, and other infrastructure. This entails investing a large number of operations that will be carried out in order to improve infrastructure. Logistically, waterways are less expensive and more environmentally friendly form of transportation than other options, drastically lowering the point-to-point cost of goods transit. Waterways make up to 6% of India's transportation modal mix, which is much less than in developed economies and some of the world's most developed economies, where the share is above or nearly 50%. The central and state governments must provide further support to inland waterways in order to reduce the time and expense of delivering freight. In India, inland water transport is still in its infancy, with the government hoping to have it fully operational inside and across states over the next 10-12 years. According to the Ministry of Shipping, inland waterways currently accounts for only 0.4%, that is about 4 billion ton per kilometer of total inland cargo flow, with projections to increase it to 20 billion tons in the coming years. The development of the IWT industry provides riverine people with a diverse range of livelihood options. Greater participation of civil society, communities, and companies in the policy-making process is required to achieve these goals. As a result, improved coordination between the relevant ministries, departments at the federal and state level, as well as a more inclusive discussion with all stakeholders, will lead to the development of a holistic approach to ensure the long-term development of inland navigation for maximum economic benefits. Odisha is a maritime state with a 480-kilometer coastline and a suitable number of potential locations for the building and upgradation of minor ports, fishing harbors, and other coastal transportation infrastructure facilities in the state's coastal region. Lastly, with these few words, I once again welcome all our eminent guests and speakers and look forward to fruitful deliberations and interactions on Inland Waterways Summit Focus-Odisha. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Santosh Mahapatra, he is a mentor, to please deliver his theme address. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Santosh Mahapatra.
Thanks, Mr. Pani, and my greetings to all the distinguished participants who Mr. Pani just named. To save time, I'll straight away come to the topic. I don't think it's necessary for me to tell this group how important, how preferred a mode of transport inland waterway is in terms of cost, in terms of environmental imprint. I was going through a paper on competitiveness of the steel industry of India, which is perhaps the most important industry of Odisha as well. And it seems that the chief reason for its lack of competitiveness, apart from higher cost of finance, which is common to all industry, is the higher percentage of logistics to the total cost of production in India, which is around 15 to 16% compared to about 7 to 8% in the other steel producing countries. And the chief reason why it is so is that the share of inland waterways in the logistics in India is only 6% compared to more than 40% in China, 30 to 40% in Europe, and 20 to 30% in USA. And I wonder where they got the 6% from, unless they have included the coking coal, some part of the coking coal imported for the steel industry by sea, or a little bit of coastal transportation which takes place. But as far as I know, the use of inland waterway by the steel industry is negligible or nil. That's what it is. It's not only that very few people realize that the capacity of ports also depend a lot on the existence or lack of inland waterway. I have often been asked this question in various port-related seminars, why it is that ports in Europe have capacity going up to 500, 600 million tons per annum. And we are proud of having a port with 50 million ton or 60 million ton capacity. It's only recently that 3 of Indian ports have crossed the 100 million mark, including, of course, Paradip. But the chief reason why our ports cannot have higher capacity is that the port capacity is dependent on capacity of evacuation, and all European ports have a huge part of evacuation taking place through inland waterways, which we don't have. Not that our ports are far away from rivers. In fact, most ports are located near the mouth of some river or other, but we don't have the inland waterway system. But let me come to the inland waterway number 5. And as Mr. Jai Singh correctly said, but it is, I'm happy that it is finally being realized. I read somewhere that during the last year or in 2020, all the inland waterways handled about 11 million tons of cargo. And it might have gone up by 2-3 million tons during the 2 years. But anyone who knows the situation in Odisha, or even the report on National Waterway number 5 says that even a part of this waterway from Kalinganagar to Dhamra, if opened, can handle 10 to 11 million tons within 4 to 5 years. That was the earlier study. I think today it will be even more. But that is how important this national waterway is. But I wonder why so far it has not, attracted the attention of Government of India in the manner in proportion to its importance. In fact, around 13-14, when I was building the Dhamra port, it's nearing completion. I was very hopeful that the inland waterway is coming. I was running to Delhi, meeting the officials there. And I was very hopeful, but somehow it again went into some kind of cold storage after that. One reason, when one perceives National Waterway number 5, let's say in the official desk of a Government of India, he finds it's a 5, earlier it was 620 kilometer or so, now it is 580 kilometer long project and at a cost which makes it 4,000 crore. He is put off. But if you look at it, nearly half of it is for a eastern coast canal. And I don't know why this canal is still there as part of National Waterway. What purpose that canal will serve today? I mean, do you think that if we build this canal, the people will send their cargo from Odisha to West Bengal by this canal, cargo like rice and cement instead of going by road or rail? And what volume that cargo will be? Why don't you remove it from, it's a baggage this waterway is carrying. When I asked these questions in 13-14, somebody replied that, look, this has been retained to give a national character to the waterway. I don't believe in that. I think a project is of national importance, not because it spreads over more than one state. I mean, look at national highways. There are national highways which are confined to one state also. If coal is a mineral of national importance, then the way through which it is carried also becomes nationally important. And therefore, there's no reason we should continue with this. Once you remove this canal, in fact, the total length of the National Waterway 5 would come down to 320 or so, and that would look, and the cost would also come down. And compared to the benefit and the cargo potential that it can handle, imagine if the new coal blocks of Talcher are opened up, and they are being opened up now. The volume of cargo that can move through waterway to Dhamra and Paradip can exceed 50 million ton. Maybe in future, it can be even much more than that, much more than all the cargo handled by all the other inland waterways put together in India. Now, if you are interested in building canal, maybe we can build 20 to 30 kilometers of canal to bring in Vaitarani into the fold. And it can open further avenues for iron ore also. One problem we have with all our projects, including building up of ports, like in Odisha, we keep harping on a list of 13 ports. Now, these were decided by IIT Chennai long back, years back, when the ship size was not more than 30,000 tons, when depth of port was not so important a criteria. Today, all these lists seem to be revisited. I will not name the port. Once I went to a prospective port for which concession agreement is already signed. I wondered whoever selected this site with such population around it for a port site, whereas there are other more beautiful sites which do not involve so much of displacement. We have to look at things afresh with a very open mind. In fact, it was one of the tours I had with my officials in Dhamra port. I was taking along the river, where we found that perhaps to make it a faster, we can think of a bypass through Kani River. And I'm very happy that WAPCO has finally picked up that suggestion of Dhamra port to include Kani River as a possibility, and they have worked out the cost implications and other implications. But that's not all. When we are talking of inland waterway, it is not just the waterway, it is from the origin to destination. Let's say the origin is Kalinganagar. In fact, Kalinganagar was not even figuring in National Waterway 5 until 13-14, and the recent study of WAPCO 16 is the first study which includes Kalinganagar and the huge potential it has for this. Now, the cargo comes from Kalinganagar to a point where the river is. Now, that has to come either by road or by conveyor belt. Now, if you put something in a truck, whether it moves 4 kilometers or let's say 20 kilometers is of little importance. If it moves 100 kilometers, yes, it makes a difference. But within 2 digits, it doesn't matter. If you are putting a thing in a conveyor belt stretching beyond your land limits through public land or private land, which has right of way for which has to be acquired, whether the conveyor belt is 4 kilometers or 20 kilometers also doesn't make much difference. In fact, Bangladesh, where inland waterways are more important, more integral, have a conveyor belt perhaps of 60 kilometers long, which goes to one of the ports. So why don't we think of the total project as a conveyor belt from Kalinganagar? If it cannot come to Pankapal, and Pankapal has a weir which has to demolish it, why not you take it further down the river, another 10 kilometers? We have to think creatively, we have to put the whole thing upside down and look at things, just as Kani was thought of, because we didn't go by the earlier route which was prescribed by the authorities long time back. We looked at it afresh. We have to look at everything afresh. And we can look at inland waterway not just as a 50-meter wide channel, for which we only think of a barrage somewhere which will feed that channel and what it will do to the river. We can link it with, I'm going to finish it. We can link it with riverfront development. We can dip in certain places and create more land, and that extra land can be an asset, and we can develop that land, and it can be hugely change, hugely change making kind of, at many places it can give us revenue. So let's look at it creatively and comprehensively and do it. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we have with us the Vice Chairman of the Inland Waterways. I think together we can make it, and it will make a lot of change if we can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santosh Mahapatra. This is precisely the reason why we have kept you as a mentor, to bring in fresh thinking. And so nice of you. Thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. Now may I request Mr. Bhupinder Singh Punia to please address us.
Thank you, Mr. Pani. And Thank you. First of all, warm welcome to all the participants on behalf of Government of Odisha. And thank you, ICC, for organizing this and providing us the opportunity to hear from the pioneers and very experienced people in the field. I think it will be just repetition if I will say the importance of waterways in the country, in the state of Odisha. And there was a discussion that why since earlier when the modern civilization started, I think waterways were the main modes of transportation. But I think, as we all know, as the mode of production and the technological changes, the modes of transportation also changes. So it was like a railroad, and then again, I think we are coming to a full circle. Again, emphasis is on waterways. It depends on our capacity in the environmental concern and the development of sustainable logistic infrastructure in the on the earth. I will say not only in the state of Odisha or the country. So today, I think we have very experienced people and authorities who will guide us, and we have already commenced the study for the state of Odisha. In this regard, I will also share that as of now, we have also engaging almost engaged consultant for the. This will be a kind of comprehensive study for the state, but for the different nodes where we actually have to work, like Paradip node, and for the mineral rich belt of Koida, Joda, Badbil. Different agencies we are conducting in-depth study what are the gaps and how they can be improved. So logistic cost, time, environmental sustainability, these are the prime concern where government of Odisha along with the government of India, we are trying to develop a system where industry, the environment, the people all can get benefit. So I think I will not take much of time. I must say I'm not expert in this, but it's like learning experience for all of us. And I commit that on behalf of government of Odisha, we will provide all support to the study, and as well as we are preparing different projects which are very critical in short term to bridge the gaps in different modes. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Punia, for the short and crisp message. And the message that you sent across is very, very heartening, that the total support of government of Odisha is there, and especially with Mr. Jain Singh here, it will be, I'm sure that message is reaching the right place, and I'm sure that very, very fruitful and some very doable things will emerge in the near future, immediate near future. Thank you, Mr. Punia.
Sure, thank you.
And we understand, of course, you have another meeting, and we would like you to join back as soon as we finish that. It'll be
Definitely.
very nice. And with that, I would now request our very own convener, Mr. Ajay Kumar Behra, who actually, when he became the convener, after that, things have really started off. And we are now seeing the study taking off, and things have really moved. And he has been very, very, he's one of the most important drivers of the project. So thank you, Mr. Behra, for coming, taking up the responsibility of being the convener. And we would now request you to please address us.
Thank you, Mr. Pani, for your very kind words. Good morning to all who are present in this most important webinar. In fact, over the past 1 year or so, ICC has organized a number of similar webinars covering different issues connected to transport logistics infrastructure for the state of Odisha. Well, already it has been said, transportation actually constitutes about 40% in the logistics supply chain. And it is said that the logistics cost is as high as 14%. Mr. Pani, you said 18%, different figures are there. But yes, it is indeed very high as compared to the global best practices, where it is about 8 to 9% only in the US and other developed countries. Transportation accounts for almost 6% of the total logistics cost. And the high costs are primarily due to a very, very fragmented logistics infrastructure that we have in our country. As far as the modal shares are concerned of the various transport modes, road accounts for the majority 60%, and railways is about 31%. Waterways, all included, I suppose. It's not only inland waterways, probably the coastal shipping also. It's about 8%, and airways is about 1%. That's what is the latest, some report I had seen very recently, commissioned again by, incidentally, ICC. So these transport modes, that is road, rail, waterways, airways, unfortunately, most of them work in very watertight silos. And there is a definite need for more synergy or integration between the modes and less competition. They should be working, together to make it a combination of different modes and how the logistics costs can be brought down instead of working in watertight silos. That is the best way and the surest way to bring down the logistics cost, to my mind. And this is the prime reason why the government has also embarked upon a mission to proliferate multimodal logistics parks all over the country. Well, I've been attending so many seminars, like I was in the railway board and I was looking after the steel logistics for the railways. And I would be asked very often in seminars like this as to why it is so expensive to cart imported coking coal from the ports of Paradip or Dhamra to a steel plant located just within 100 kilometers, whereas the cost of freight, ocean freight, all the way from Australia to one of these gateway ports was almost half of it. So it is a very, very difficult question to answer, but the answer was very simple. Well, in railways, the cost of the permanent way, the signaling gear and overhead traction, which is there above the rails, and the periodical maintenance requirements, also the rolling stock. We have got huge rolling stocks in the railways. All put together, the cost that comes about makes it expensive, definitely. On the long haul, inland transportation by rail is cheap, but you see, it can never compare with water transport, which is the blessing of Mother Nature. You don't have to worry about all these fixed costs, except of course for the terminals. Probably the single biggest challenge for water transport, particularly the riverine transport, is the limited draft. And for transportation of, am I audible?
Yes, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. The limited draft is a major challenge, and for bulk transportation of goods like coal, iron ore, and food grains, fertilizer, petroleum products, and I think that drafts have to be improved. But these are, I'm sure, already being addressed, which can be gauged from the fact that, going again by some statistical figures I came across, in the pre-pandemic period, financial year 18, it was about 55 million tons water transport, which was in a year itself, by financial year 19 had grown to 72 million tons, which is a whopping 31% increase. I think that is the way forward, and waterways transport is definitely going to be the thing in the future. And it would make absolute sense to synergize and get more and more combination of riverine transport with the other major modes like rail, road, so that through these multimodal logistics parks, if there can be a bridging between waterways and the other modes, I think the overall logistics costs can be brought down. And that is going to be the major challenge in the days ahead. As far as this part of the country is concerned, the potential is very, very huge. And already Mahapatra sir has mentioned that the inland waterways route number 5 has got huge potential and vastly remains untapped. We are very fortunate to have with us today Mr. Jayant Singh, Vice Chairman, Inland Waterways Authority. And I'm sure he's going to give his inputs on the development plans that are for this region, and also help us plan out things that need to be done so that we can take it forward and have more volumes of cargo moving on the riverine routes. ICC, with the blessings of the state government and the industries, has embarked upon a mission for development of a comprehensive transport logistics infrastructure report for Odisha, and that is being developed by RITES. And the study is intended to bring out present and future scenarios of inbound, outbound, and transit traffic from various points of production or origin to the points of consumption, and spell out the infrastructure that exists and what is the requirement over a time horizon of, say, 15-20 years by factoring in the projected growth. It will also make specific recommendations on the transport logistics cost aspect. And I'm sure this is going to be very beneficial to all the stakeholders, state government, the railways, the ports, the industries, and in fact, also the various logistics service providers. And that's a growing area, and I'm sure this report is going to be very, very valuable for everybody. Last but not the least, I would like to mention that I also have come across a report that India has as much as 14,500 kilometers of navigable waterways, and the potential needs to be harnessed to the optimum level. And today's seminar is all about inland waterways transport, and I'm sure from the experience gained from the inputs given by all the panelists, we will take it forward and make it happen. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajay Behra. And that was very comprehensive. And I totally agree with you that this will make a lot of difference. And in fact, the most important organization which will make a difference to this is the IWAI. And we are fortunate to have Mr. Jayant Singh, who is the Vice Chairman of Inland Water Authorities of India. And we welcome him. He is an alumni of from St. Stephen's and has done his MPhil degree in security studies from National Defense College, New Delhi. Of course, he belongs to a 1993 batch of IRTS, and he has served in various capacities in Western, Northwestern Railway and Concor, and he brings in his vast experience. He has been a faculty member of the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, and I'm sure that Mr. Jayant Singh and his organization will bring about a huge difference to the economy of the country and especially of Orissa. So with this, may I welcome Mr. Jayant Singh to please deliver his address. Mr. Jayant Singh, please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, exactly. I'd like to share, can I share my presentation?
Sure, you can.
It's asking this time limit.
What is this?
Yeah.
Jyoti, what is this?
Yeah, no, I don't know. There's some issue here. Actually, I just wanted to upload my presentation.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And it's a close one.
Jyoti, have we not done from the official Zoom account?
No, this is from official Zoom account. This is from shares IWA. Their office is sharing their screen. This one.
Okay.
So close करें क्या? If I'm screen sharing, just a moment. I have. This is what I want to share. Yeah, here we go. Is it visible? Is the presentation visible now?
Not yet, sir. Not yet, sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry for the glitch here. Is it visible now?
Yes,
Now
sir.
it's visible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm very sorry for this glitch. Without much ado, I just come down straight to the brass tacks here because I think the context has been said very beautifully by Mr. Mahapatra and Mr. Behra. And we simply cannot overemphasize the importance of inland waterway in addressing the logistic challenges in Odisha, and especially this particular belt, which perhaps in my limited experience of waterways, inland waterways, is the only track I see in the country where there is an optimal modal balance. You know, one of the logistical refrains of this country, if I may say, has been the fact that there's a lot of empty running in our country. Mr. Behra is from the railways, and a coal movement on a box and rake, even a container rake movement is beset with this problem. But if we were to develop NW5, I can't think of a more symbiotic and more win-win kind of a project if we were to operationalize this. So with that, what I'll do is I'll just briefly introduce what exactly is inland waterways about, very briefly, so that we get a perspective of our capabilities also, which aren't too great actually. We're still a growing organization. That said, how we intend doing NW5, but I'll also keep on re-emphasizing one point, that this is a project where all the stakeholders would have to come in. So with that, I'll just start my presentation. So this is what it is. I mean, just to get the perspective about national waterway, we have to understand how many are there. 111 waterways. I mean, these are basically the rivers, the canal, the tributaries have been identified as national waterways, of which only 23, that's about 5,200 kilometers, have been identified for movement. And out of which very few actually, how many, I don't know, 16 or 17 actually are fit both for passenger and freight movement. That said, it should not deter us because the kind of potential it offers is enormous. And I'm very happy to share one bit of statistics, because in logistics, unless you back your assertion with numbers, they are meaningless, is that this is by far the fastest growing mode of transport in the country. And and really sky is the limit. There are issues, the capacity constraint, capacity not so much in terms of demand, but the capacity of IWI to deliver. I'll talk about that later. So this is what it is. If you see, the eastern part of our country is very well endowed with this resource, and this is the target area as far as the if you look at the overall growth of the country is concerned, because west and south are going far a lot faster than east and certain parts of the north. And of course, when we talk more strategically in terms of our focus on Act East policy, the salience of waterways simply cannot be overlooked. So with this background of this, these are the numbers I was talking about. This bar chart is quite self-explanatory and need not dwell much on that. And if we are able to sustain this growth, even with the we haven't really invested too much with our limited investment, we sure are well on our way to achieve a target that has been set for the inland waterways by the Maritime Vision 2030 of carrying 200 million tons. So this is where we are at the moment. We are just about 2% of the total logistics share, which we want to enhance. Now, the good news is we are growing. The bad news I'll be sharing as I go along. But number one, of course, I mentioned was the capacity. Number two is the challenge of geography. I'll come to that later. So this, or to your right, is the brief history of inland waterways. So we are relatively new. And one point I'd like to state here that especially it would be of a lot of relevance to Mr. Mahapatra, who would have served at least more than 3 decades in government, that for any modal switch to happen, it requires a lot of sustained policy support and a lot of hand-holding. And waterways I've studied, I joined during the height of the second wave of Corona when not much was happening. So I read a lot of reports by the UNDP, by SCAP, by Asian Development Bank on the global experience of development of waterways. It takes generations to develop these. So when we look at Rhine or Danube or Scheldt or Mississippi or Yangtze or even Mekong, it has taken decades to come up with it. So although, yeah, future looks very bright and everybody's been talking about it, yet we have to, pause and have a very, very realistic assessment. That said, the potential still, as I've been maintaining, is enormous. And this is the commodity profile broadly. So for bulk cargo, which is not very, very time sensitive, where the logistics cost is perhaps the highest component of the overall costing, Waterway is the mode, actually, the go-to mode. And when I talk about Waterways as a mode, I don't look at Waterways as a mode that is competing with rail or road here. We are actually Waterways here. We actually do a lot of complementary kind of supplementary kind of road. To give you a small example, yesterday, yesterday only, my minister flagged off the consignment of steel from Calcutta to Guwahati, which will be transported via Waterway. Now, steel is a commodity that is ideally suited for carriage by rail. But my problem is with rail is that if I were to carry small consignments, 400, 500 metric tons, this particular consignment was 900 metric tons, railways, availability of rolling stock becomes an issue, number one. Number two, cost is higher. And most importantly, the opportunity cost is even higher, because most of our railways, most of the railway routes in the eastern sector are as it is saturated. It makes far more sense for the economy, for any sensible, public policy practitioner to move 3,200 tons of coal for power plants rather than using that rolling stock and the path, which is a very critical component in logistics, for moving that 900 tons of steel when it can move by waterways. So clearing that air, now I come specifically to Waterways in the context of the state of Odisha. Now let me start with a confession. I have unfortunately never visited Odisha. Most of my knowledge has come by interacting with professionals who have worked. I'm glad Architecno is participating in this. I've had an informal interaction with them. They've done a good yeoman service here in this area. And I've spoken to people from WAPCOS and certainly our professionals from Inland Waterways who've been a part of National Waterway 5 projectization. So what little I have understood, I'll just share with you. So the advantage are, I've just listed here, these four. Economical, yes, Mr. Behra and Mr. Mahapatra pointed out, it is a very economical mode of transport, cost per ton basis. It is very, very eco-friendly mode of transport, needless to say it is in terms of its carbon footprint. And although in our short-termism, whenever we talk of our silos, respective silos, be it railways, roadways, waterways, we have a very short-term view. But if you see the long-term view, we have to move towards sustainable growth. We have to meet the targets set for India, for the country, and as part of COP26. So we have to look at this issue strategically. But the point I'm trying to highlight is my bullet point number 3. Everywhere else, whether we are adding capacity to railways or we are adding capacity to roadways, there is a strong element of land acquisition, which is a very vexatious, it's a tricky, it's a contentious issue. And as the years go by, with the population on land, the fragmentation of holding and blah, 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 all these things happening, is going to become ever more intractable. Waterways, the biggest advantage Waterways offers in Odisha is that when you use Waterways, you are adding to your logistics capacity, you are adding to your transport capacity without having to acquire land. Acquisition of land, there are a lot of IAS officers in the audience here, people who have dealt with land-related issues. It's a tricky issue, not only an economic issue, it has social dimension, it has cultural dimensions. Okay, so and of course, economic dimension. So Waterway does not require land acquisition, which it confers it a big advantage. And the third and the last point that I really want to highlight, especially for the benefit of my friends from the industry and the state government, that there would be a great degree of hand-holding, lot of support by the government. By government here, I mean the central government. This central government is very much committed to developing waterways. We are not looking at short-term gain. And every time I'm speaking in a seminar or in any audience or any forum, one thing I keep emphasizing ad nauseum is that this is Inland Waterways Authority of India and not Inland Water Transport Corporation of India. I'm not really looking at, the bottom line, the financial bottom lines here. I'm just trying to develop a mode of transport. So a lot of hand holding. So these are the advantages that all the stakeholders here, our friends from the industry as well as the state government of Odisha, I hope they are, sensitized to this aspect, the advantages that Waterways confers. However, let me red flag certain issues. The first and foremost are the initial investment, because developing Waterway, Mr. Behra pointed out in his address, is a costly exercise, because you have to look at dredging, you have to look at the kind of interferences that comes in, like in terms of bridges, the pontoons, etc., etc. Good news is that all these interventions and all these interruptions, can be handled. They can be tackled. We have the technology, we have the wherewithal. The bad news, however, is that they all require very, very heavy investment. So initial investment in Waterways is high. But that said, and that was one. The second is geography. Now, the fact is that our rivers are, if I were to state a difference between rivers in India and rivers in other countries where inland water transport is developed, is that our rivers are not deep. They are wide and they are shallow and they are seasonal. So I'm forever fighting geography. And trust me, this whole 5,000 crore rupees project on National Waterway on Ganga, our engineers only know the kind of problems that we face in terms of the silt load that comes year after year, the shifting banks, the meandering river, changing of course of rivers, and the debris that comes in, that makes not only navigability suspect, but it can also become a safety hazard. So geography is a very critical dimension. Of course, this problem is not so acute, thankfully, in Odisha, but this is something we will do very well to be very, very cognizant of and aware of. The third and a very critical dimension as far as Waterways in Odisha is concerned are the conflicting claims. Inland waterways, unfortunately, have a right on the waterway. We don't have right over water. Water is very much a state subject, and there are conflicting claims to the water. You need water for drinking. Unfortunately, we've been using rivers not so much for navigation. We've been using rivers as a natural reservoir of water for irrigation, for drinking. So there are conflicting claims, and I really won't blame the state government if it say that, okay, the first right to the river water would be for drinking purposes, then for irrigation only Waterway would come a distant third. But that is fine. But this is, again, we have to be very, very, very aware of. And fourth is the whole ecosystem. If I were to develop inland water transport as a mode of transport, the whole ecosystem has to be developed, which means I have to develop the fairways, I have to develop navigation facilities, I have to develop terminals, and most importantly, I have to get the entire ecosystem of transport. That means the vessels, the barges, the tugs, the dredgers, their maintenance facility, everything in place. And then with that, bringing that in, then I have to make a big transition from one mode to the other by getting all the major consigners by this whole concept of waterway. That mental block has to be overcome. We are switching from trailers, from dumpers to from railway wagons to waterway. This whole transition would require a change in the mental mind, the mind space also of the consigners. So these are the few the challenges. I wouldn't say impediment. There are certainly the challenges. The bad news is these challenges are there. They are pretty stark. They are of very large magnitude. But the good news is, with technology, with the kind of right policy interventions, all these challenges are very much surmountable. Now, I'll just come to now specifically to our thoughts on National Waterway 5. Now we have, for the convenience of execution and for the convenience of projectization, this is what we really have in mind. We divided this whole thing into 3 stretches. Mangalgadi to Pankapal. Basically, this whole stretch, the good news about this stretch is that this is predominantly tidal stretch, if I'm not mistaken, which gives us LAD here. If you see the table to your right, it talks about LAD. LAD is least available depth. So this gives us a depth, a perennial depth of 1.2 meter, which can definitely be enhanced Yeah, huh? Yeah, and yeah, of course, that's a good thing. Our Mr. Murugesan is the engineer, the deputy director here who's in charge of this. Now he is telling me because of the tidal flow, this minimum depth is naturally augmented by 1 meter. So this stretch is very, very convenient for initial part of it. So we just have to do extensive hydrographic bathymetric surveys, identify the channels, mark the channel, remove obstacles, and get the waterway operational. Second part is the tricky one, the Talcher to Pankapal. This is a tricky part because here there are availability of water would be an issue, and I'll come to that. I have details slide if time permits. I'll be very happy to share those. Here, depth is a problem because as you move more and more inland, the available depth goes on increase. So here, a lot of intervention would be required, which I'll be mentioning outlining briefly in my subsequent slide. And of course, the third slide is the third phase is the stretch from Dhamra to Charbatia and Charbatia to Jeon Khali. So in all, this is not a very ambitious project. If you are able to, divide it rationally, phase 1, phase 2 can be taken up, which would be about 120 plus about 200, 320 odd kilometers, which is eminently doable. I say eminently doable because the stakes are very high. We have traffic both upstream and downstream. And then it is an iterative process. Like Ganga, we've been working on Ganga for the last about 3.5 years. There are a lot of things we learn as we go along the way. We have to be very, very flexible in our approach. For example, something as elementary, as basic, as dredging a waterway, there are 3 or 4 different models, there is no one size fit all solution. So we have to improvise as we go along. And this is the kind of traffic potential that we have. This is based on WAPCO's study, right? So WAPCO had undertaken a traffic survey also, and I won't say this is the last word. I'm glad Mr. Punia highlighted the fact that they are commissioning very, very detailed studies. So I would love to I'll be very happy to share my report. At the same time, I'd love to exchange notes with him that what are their findings. Of course, we'll be talking to each of the consigners and ICC separately on this. Architecno has done a great study. So I hope they would also agree, plus or minus 10% that this is the kind of, these are the kind of volumes that we are looking at. Gypsum and a whole lot of other movements that are there. To start with, and of course, a lot of movement of sand, stone aggregates, which is a very important component of the building industry. This is very, very important. And of course, and when we talk of waterway, we don't talk of longitudinal movement alone. We should also look at the cross river movement, through roll on, roll off, or cargo movement there. Here, of course, is Mr. Punia still with us, or do we have Manoj Mishra with us here in the audience?
Mr. Punia, no, unfortunately, Mr. Manoj Mishra and Mr. Punia are away in the meeting with the.
Mr. Pani, this is the biggest problem with, I see issue with government. Even I'll be also taking off. I had a meeting at 12:30. Government bureaucrats like talking and they don't like listening. So I'm sorry, I also belong to that.
But a team of EPICOL is there, sir. The officials from
entire team is there. And of
course, Mrs. Anu Garg has been bereaved recently. She lost her father, unfortunately, who was my boss a long time ago. So I can understand she's not there. But anyway, so these are some of the the kind of traffic that we have. If you see, there are a lot of issues of coordination with the state government that we have to handle regarding movement of gypsum, regarding movement of stone aggregate, and the roll-on, roll-off operation. And, this brings me back to the point that anything that we decide on waterway cannot be done by Indian Waterways Authority alone. There has to be a support from the state government. A lot of support. Support does not even only mean financial support. I'm not even looking at, I don't want financial support. I just want, because ultimately they are the custodians, they are the owners of this. Whatever asset is created is for the betterment of the people, betterment of the state. So with that spirit, we'll have to work. And industrial cargo, the potential is this. Again, I'm not so sure about the numbers here. I am numerically challenged here. So this is a number that we have as far as the potential is concerned. Kalinganagar industry, if you look at long-term prospect, and we are in 2022 already. So by the time we are able to execute this project in 3 to 4 years, it will take. These are the numbers we're looking at. 19 million tons per annum is still, I would say, a very, very conservative estimate. So the potential is enormous. Okay. And this is when I'm just talking about movement from the hinterland up to the ports. If I were to add coastal movement, and this is what actually our long-term vision is. Again, I will not look at from the point of view of Inland Waterways Authority alone. I will look at it from a more macro level perspective. This segment going via coastal shipping up to Haldia, up to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a booming economy. They would need a lot of imports from Odisha. I mean, the sky is the limit. And if we are able to create some sort of an economic zone here, something like a NAFTA or something, then of course, even the the actual figures would transcend my optimism by a factor of 4 or 5. And that said, I just like to state the way ahead, how we see it should develop, and this is what I would like ICC and other stakeholders to be mindful of. First of all, we need a very, very solid institutional architecture. So by means of that, I mean either an agreement or we have an MOU which needs to be with the Odisha government, which needs to be revived, not only revived, but we'll have to make it more comprehensive, following it up with a few very, very solid agreements, especially regarding movement of gypsum, regarding movement of stone aggregate. And not only that, integration of stakeholders. Good thing about National Waterway 5 is that there are a lot of big consigners, big consignees. So when I talk of investment, I'm not looking at constructing jetties, because I think Jindals and all the big players here, Tatas and all, they would have their own jetties. The second, we would like a more in-depth and a robust detailed project report. Architecno has done a good job. I'm glad that the state government is also commissioning a study. So we need to delve into all this, and I just hope these studies are not copy-paste jobs. They are based on some actual survey, actual potential, but conducted with a lot of with collection and analysis, a lot of primary data, not a mere intermodal extrapolation of data, which unfortunately happens when we conduct traffic surveys. Third thing then we have to do, once we have all this data, we have to do projectization. 3 projects. Number 1, fairways. How are we going to develop the waterways? Number 1, the fairways for movement. Number 2, what kind of structures we need to build, what kind of jetties or terminals we need to build, and what kind of structures we need to remove. There'll be a lot of bridges, they will have to be removed, their level will have to be raised, a lot of coordination would be required with railways also, and I'm glad East Coast Railway is now based out of Bhubaneswar, so it would hopefully make things a lot easier. And ... vessels, because this is, to my mind, a major challenge for inland waterways. I have a very small fleet, because my commercial operation is not my mandate. So I have a very, very limited fleet of vessels. How to get more vessels here is going to be a challenge, but we have to convert that into some sort of a project that either we do acquisition of vessels, or we come up with some program whereby we are able to finance manufacturing of vessels by shipyards, acquisition of vessels, and leasing of vessels by the operators or the consignees, as the case may be. Then once we have the project, we have to make sure that we get the right funding. And the kind of funding I shared earlier in one of my slides would require us to the tune of something like 5,000 crores. It's a big project, but still 5,000 crores, I think it would be in national interest that we spend this money. The returns will, and if you see the economic returns, the environmental benefit that will come up with Waterway, the kind of ancillary spin-offs that would accrue to the state would more than compensate. And I'm sure our consultants sitting in ADB and World Bank can do the number crunching and make it a very, 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 very viable project. So I leave that to leave the funding part to the experts here. And then the project will have to be managed very professionally. And last but not the least would be the upscaling. By upscaling, I mean better coastal linkages, with coastal shipping, so that we are able to bring Odisha hinterland in viable contact with Bangladesh, with other states of India through coastal shipping and waterway combination. And when I convert all this from the idea to actual, doable things, that the real nuts and bolts, this is what it basically entails: signing MOU, which I mentioned, vetting of designs and drawings, and the DPRs, and the DPRs for modification of bridge structures. So everywhere, if you see this slide very carefully, it is a two-way. It's a two-way street. It would require a lot of full-time commitment by the Odisha government. So we need to create. That's why when I mentioned the roadmap, I mentioned a very strong institutional architecture. We need that. Otherwise, this just won't take off. And then detailed project report. Once we have all these in place, only then we can actually start with the actual construction on the ground. And the construction, this is again pure civil engineering slide, would require this: 4 weirs, 3 navigation locks, 2 check dam, 1 rubber dam, 9 road bridge modifications, shifting of high tension line, construction of multimodal terminal at Pankapal. I'm sure for this there'll be this can be done via PPP, because this project is so lucrative that I'm very, very positive unless we have some major macroeconomic meltdown, if we continue on the trajectory of growth, the Indian economy, I'm sure I'll be able to find partners under the design, build, operate mode here. And this is the index map. Again, this details are just to get a spatial appreciation of this whole waterway. So I'll just let the slide remain for 30 seconds for the consumption of our audience. And I would request here the stakeholders, I mean, I haven't been to Odisha. The best way to do it would be to arrange some sort of a chopper, some helicopter, so that we can actually traverse along this and come back within a couple of hours. That will be the best way to understand, or some sort of a drone photography. So whoever is undertaking a DPR would be well advised to use a lot of drones and satellite imagery, along with some sort of an aerial reconnaissance, to get a good appreciation of this entire stretch. These are the bridges, there are a whole lot of them. I'm not talking much here because unless I see them physically, I will not be able to talk with authority. But it is quite challenging. But again, it's an engineering challenge, so no issue with that. I mean, we have the technology global, and of course, when we will undertake a project here, it would be we'll go for the best in the world in terms of technology. And the shifting of cables. So these are 3-4 critical components here: high tension line, shifting, and all. So with this, I will end my presentation here. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayan Singh. I really admire the presentation that you made without visiting Odisha. So in the road admission. So that's nice that you have really gleaned a lot of information from various sources. That is very obvious. And what really I liked was the positivity in your entire address, right through, telling that wherever the technical challenges that can be easily overcome because there are engineering levels, and you went on constantly harping that ultimately it's the state government which has to take ownership of it. And I can assure you, the stakeholders and the type of interaction that we had with the entire state government is very, very heartening. They are very positive. And I would say that when you come here and meet, then you will know that they seriously mean business. And I understand that you have already signed a certain amount of MOUs and with the state government, the government of India and the state government. So definitely we will be able to carry it through. And all the stakeholders, all the industry, be it Jindals, be it Tatas, be it Nalco, be it all the entire Kalinagar belt, they're all members of ICC and they are involved. So I can only assure you that, and we look forward to a visit by you to Bhubaneswar, and of course, taking a chopper along should not be any difficulty because many organizations have that, and that can be easily organized. And we have to ensure that what is important is that we come along, we take it up, and it has to be, any project of this magnitude has to be sustained in nature.
Absolutely.
And
Chairman, can I also be given a chance to just
yes, sir,
interact with Mr. Jayan Singh? Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a few suggestions since you are also pressed in terms of time. You have very rightly, in our search for low-hanging fruits, divided into phases. Pankapal to Dhamra, Paradip, you understand, is more doable than the rest, and it gives you more return also. But you can further divide it to Pankapal to Dhamra and Pankapal to Paradip, because Paradip is fraught with a few problems. Earlier, it was much more. It passes through wildlife park, and perhaps the rivers are not very wide. So now we have revised it by taking it through the bay, through the sea for a certain length. But that will have its own problems because the barges have to be seaworthy, and it will have more logistics. So if you can further divide it to, not because I built Dhamra port, I have also expanded Paradip port. I'm giving a very impartial view. If you make it into two sub phases, Pankapal to Dhamra and Pankapal to Paradip, Pankapal to Dhamra is more easily doable and can start giving you some return, right? Secondly, I believe Pankapal has also its problem unless some weir is reconstructed and other things. The devil lies in details. I would like your team to really look at it. Why we chose Pankapal at that time? Because it is 4 kilometers away from the steel plants, and perhaps they can lay a conveyor belt, or there is some kind of road. But once, we are not going to the door of the plant, we are still away from the plant. Supposing by extending that 4 kilometers to, let's say, 12 kilometers, we are getting a place where these wear and other problems do not, we go further down and we avoid these problems. Are we able to get a better place? In which case, we can think of that along with the cooperation of the industries. The terminal at near Pankapal should be combined with a road or conveyor belt project so that the whole thing works out. And thirdly, as you said, fairway structures and vessels, I can assure you, once the fairway is ready, the private sector will invest in vessels.
Absolutely, sir. Even I'm quite positive about
barges
that.
are idle in Goa, and some old barges will come in, and there shouldn't be a problem. In structures, please separate the structures like bridges from the structures like terminals. Terminals can again be done by the private sector.
Bilkul, sir, I mentioned that.
Bridges are part of the fairway. They are not part of structure. Please make that division.
No, what I meant when I said structures, I don't mean.
I'm sure you do that. I'm sure you have looked at it correctly. Finally, I had requested Jyoti also. We are discussing an asset without involving the owner of the asset. The Secretary Water Resources is very important. The Department of Water Resources of Odisha is very important. Please do meet them. And as you correctly said, their concerns are a priority. But without involving them, our only doing it will not really take off.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. In fact, Santosh, Mr. Singh definitely mentioned that Ms. Anugar couldn't attend because of her.
Okay. She is the Secretary of Water Resources. I didn't realize it. Okay.
Talked to Anu also, and she,
sure.
Ms. Garg also, and she.
I'm sorry, I missed.
She's in Delhi, and then that's all. Okay. With that, I think we come to the end of the inaugural session, and we thank Mr. Jayant Singh and everyone who were there. I can assure you again, Mr. Jayant Singh, that Mr. Manoj Mishra and Mr. Hemant Sharma, everyone are seized of this. In fact, Mr. Manoj Mishra has already texted me twice saying that the meeting is still on, and that's the reason why he could not attend, and he will take full details from us. So that is the position right now. With that, I thank everyone, and of course our mentor, and I would request Santosh to please continue your presence even during the technical session, because you can bring in a lot of input out there. But I would like now the technical session to start off immediately, and I would also request Rajesh Roy Chaudhary to please sort of moderate it. And we have Mr. C.L. Shah there, Mr. Annie Srivastav, and our very own Mr. Pankaj Satija, and of course Rajesh. So with that, do I have everyone's permission to start the technical session? Thank you. So may I request Rajesh to please moderate this session.
Thank you, Mr. J.B. Pani, Chairman, ICC Odisha State Council. My dignitaries on the guest on the dignitaries and the guest. As we go further to the technical session, I would also like to thank Jayant Singh sir for his time and for a nice presentation and the way forward that he's looking for Odisha. In fact, most of the presentation that I had also prepared is aligned with sir's presentation, but the total members, all the other technical members, I would like to present a detailed presentation in my presentation. Before that, we would like to call upon Mr. C.L. Saha, IRT's General Manager, Transport Economists Rights Limited, along with Ms. Ani Srivastav, Assistant Manager, Transport and Economists Division, Economic Division Rights Limited, Government of India, for giving a brief introduction on the comprehensive report on the transport logistic infrastructure of Odisha, which has been assigned. This white paper has been assigned to rights by ICC along with Government of Odisha to prepare a comprehensive report which will take care of the not only the inland waterways but also the road and the rail network, along with the pipeline corridors and conveyor belts for the last minute connectivity also. So can I have Mr. C.L. Saha?
Good afternoon all. This is Ani Srivastav, and unfortunately Mr. C.L. Saha, our GM, is not able to attend due to some health issues, and I'll be taking over the presentation. Okay.
Please go ahead.
Is my screen visible?
Not yet.
Not yet.
How about now?
Not yet.
Okay, just
Can you see that green button in the middle?
yes, the share screen.
Share screen, yes.
I'll just
Miss Annie, you are stuck.
Maybe, sir, we can do one thing. We can move to next to Mr. Satija from Tata Steel
Okay.
Limited.
Yeah, we will do that. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Very sorry for this technical glitch, and we'll catch up with Ms. Annie Srivastav in a short while. In between, I would like to request Mr. Pankaj Satija, member and core advisor committee, convener ICC Minerals and Metals Committee, and managing director Tata Steel Mining Limited. Over to Mr. Satija.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And a lot of deliberations have happened over inland waterways, and it gives me immense pleasure also to witness and participate in this program, because as a steel maker, we always know there are many reports also furnished by Niti Aayog that all the steel makers are competitive to the world peers as long as it is considered at the factory gate. But when it comes to the FOB, there is a disability factor of $80 to $90 per ton, which is primarily because of logistics. So while we are at par with our global peers, the logistics, as we know, it limits our potential of export. Atmanirbhar Bharat, though the underlying theme is to make ourselves self-reliant, but then there's a theme of be ready for export also, and a lot of opportunities also in future. And Government of India also has taken a target of 300 million ton. So if you see from the Indian context, India has around 14,500 kilometers of navigable inland waterways. And the logistics shares, if you see, In USA, it is 8.3%. In Europe, it is 7%. China 8.7%, where India it is 1.5%. I know these data are known to everyone and people have discussed this also. But I just wanted to highlight that there's a potential of using inland waterways compared to the world benchmark. Logistics cost, we all know how it is hampering or inhibiting the growth opportunities. We all talked about NW5, and NW5, I feel not only from the perspective of cost, but also on the prospect of when India is going towards decarbonization and the greener and reliable mode of logistics, NW5 has a great potential. Compared to NW1, you might have witnessed that using waterways for steel is not new. It has been done in India, and yesterday report also, if you see, which was also published by PIB, that from Haldia to Pandu in Assam, the steel has been sent. So when it can be done in NW1, it can be done in NW5 also. There are other opportunities in terms of inbound as well as in terms of outbound, because if you see the NW5, which is the East Coast Canal with Brahmani River and Mahanadi Delta, it connected with Paradip and Dhamra. So this will enable a smooth evacuation of our inbound materials, which all the steel makers and others, if they want to procure coal, because coal anyway will be dependent on overseas for some time. But yes, it will also help in outbound of our steel products. There are certain issues which we all are aware, like dredging and others, that can also be taken care in due course of time. I'm sure when we are making DPR, we are aware of such issues that how to maintain this LAD, list available depth of 2.5 meters. So these all will be noted, and these all will be taken care of. And there are other possibilities and opportunities on the multimodal logistics of how...
Mr. Annie, can you stop sharing right now?
And that may help us not only the inbound supply, but as well as the outbound supply. So these are my limited points as of now. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Satija, for giving the industry brief and what is the requirement in terms of Atmanirbhar, as well as the government policies to export iron ore. And in fact, as you mentioned, the movement of iron ore is away. The steel is already happening from Haldia to Pandu. Yesterday, we had witnessed chairman flagging off the vessel from Haldia to Pandu with steel contained in it. So I would now request Ms. Annie, if you are ready with your presentation.
Yes, definitely. I just got disconnected. I'll share my screen again. I hope it is visible now.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. This is Annie Srivastav, Assistant Manager from the Transport and Economics Division in RITES Limited. And since we are focusing on the inland waterways today, the main focus is on Odisha. Let's see what will be the flow of this presentation. We'll be starting off with the introduction, then a small brief about the national waterways in India, which we have already discussed previously, the National Waterway 5, the scope of inland waterways, the advantages, challenges, and way forward. Starting with RITES Limited, which is a Mini Ratna Category 1 Schedule A public sector enterprise under the Ministry of Railways, is doing a study on the transport logistics infrastructure of Odisha, which is awarded by the Indian Chamber of Commerce. There are a few points that we are looking into mainly. It is about the gap assessment of the infrastructure in terms of the existing and what was planned in respect to the projected volume of traffic. We'll also look into the strategy and approaches to bridge this gap in terms of different modes of transport and the requirement of the infrastructure. We'll also be looking into the missing links for integration of all the modes of transport and optimizing the unit cost of transport. A brief overview on the national waterways in India. It is about 14,500 kilometer navigable waterways in India, about 111, which was declared by the National Waterway Act in 2016. Out of which National Waterway 1, 2, and 3 are operational. The rest under preparation. And as also we have heard, 2% is the modal share of inland waterways as per the data in 2021 out of in comparison to the railways and the roadways. Moving our focus to the National Waterway 5, which passes through West Bengal and Orissa. In West Bengal, it is only about 90 kilometers, the rest in Orissa. Let's see this map on the right. We'll see the different stretch of the waterways. The first one is the canal between Jionkhali to Charbatia, which is about 217 kilometers. On the Matai River, which is here, we have a stretch of 40 kilometers between Charbatia and Dhamra. On the Brahmani, Kharsua, and Dhamra River, which is this one, we have Talse to Dhamra in a stretch of about 265 kilometers, and the Mahanadi Delta River, which is this part. It is the Mangalgadi to Paradip section of about 101 kilometers. So this national water, it was declared as the national waterway on 25th November 2008. And as per studies, I have found out that it is proposed to be developed in 2 phases, for which various MOUs have been signed between the government of Orissa, Paradip Port, and Dhamra Port. There is also a scope of interconnectivity between the National Waterway 1 and National Waterway 5 to establish trade relations with Bangladesh and Bhutan. It is not just National Waterway integration with National Waterway 1, but it can also be integrated with other national waterways for import-export purposes. Now let's look into the scope of what are the minerals and ores that are found in Orissa. It is rich in coal, diamond, high-grade iron ore, which we already know, gold, other valuable stones, lead, graphite, limestone. Now I have put in 4 pictures above because these are some major commodities, very importantly found in Orissa, and are the main point of focus. The first is coal, which we can use in thermal power plants. Diamond, of course, in jewelry and also export purposes. Now the high-grade iron ore, which is used for building steel bridges, is important for bridging the gap where we have missing links between different modes of transport, be it the waterways, roadways, and railways. And the last one, of course, we have gold and gemstones, an important commodity found there. Now, what kind of commodity is suitable for transport through the inland water transport? It should be in bulk, non-perishable in nature, and should have almost no reactivity when it comes in contact with water. And time sensitivity is an important factor that we count there. Similar studies have been conducted on National Waterway 2 by us, and these are some of the advantages that we can observe through transport of commodities and also passengers through the inland water transport. It is highly efficient and energy saving, as about 1 horsepower of 1 horsepower can carry about 4,000 kg of cargo through waterways, whereas it is only about 500 kg by rail and 150 by the roadways. It is also very cheap for bulk transport and which has fairly low risk of perishability, as I mentioned in the previous slide, and also which requires less maintenance as compared to the rail and road. Now, inland waterways are important in places where there is heavy rainfall, where road construction and railway construction become an issue, and it gives a boost to the import and export, helping in building international trades. Now, when we come to this map, we can see at Paradeep, we can have movements across when we, as I already mentioned, when we move across National Waterway 5, connecting to National Waterway 1, and through the IBP route, when we connect to the National Waterway 2, we can establish relationships with trade relations with Bangladesh, Bhutan, and downside we can have Myanmar and other places for the import and export. River cruise and water adventure sports can be a great attraction for tourists. I also read up that while connecting National Waterway 5 to National Waterway 1, there is a possibility of tourism, river cruise movement on short haul as well as long haul basis. For the short haul, places like Puri could be visited, and for the long haul, places along the National Waterway 1, which is Varanasi, Prayagraj, those places can be covered. Now, along with the advantages, there are a few challenges on using the inland waterways in Odisha. Since it is based on the coastal region, cyclone and floods are a major drawback. So, which causes unstable conditions and silting for navigation through the waterways. Other challenges that we have observed while doing the study on the National Waterway 2 is stakeholders, the industry is not preferring the waterways because of its long transit time. Although it is cheap, it is about 1.06 per metric ton. It is the lowest, after which rail comes about 1.48, and for road it takes about 2.48 per metric ton, rupees per metric ton. Still, because of its long transit time, it becomes inconvenient. Also, it comes up with its own challenge of poor last mile connectivity. Now, when we take last mile connectivity into consideration, it also increases cost due to multiple handling of cargo, where we require a lot of manpower for loading and unloading at different places, ultimately increasing the final cost of transport. So for handling, for loading, unloading, it would be around rupees 4 per bag to about 105 rupees per metric ton. So we can see the difference that is created due to multiple handling. Now, what is the way forward? The challenges that I mentioned in the previous slide, how can we propose to solve them? So when, although it is waterways are energy saving in nature, last mile and multiple handling can be solved through developing multimodal logistics park. So this would be one-stop shop solution, where we can integrate the three modes, that is waterways, roadways, and railways, and avoid multiple handling of loading, unloading, and also reducing the manpower. Now, as per the natural calamities are concerned, one solution would be building RCC terminals because they are much more stable instead of floating jetties, and also deploying infrastructure like towers and buildings to reduce the effect of the damage that is caused by the cyclones. So this was my take on it, and thank you very much.
Rajesh?
So I think Rajesh, Mr. Chaudhary got disconnected, and
Okay.
he's trying to getting back.
Okay. So we can request, I think Rajesh only has to make a presentation now.
Yes, he has to making the presentation and concluding this thing.
Okay. Just check with him, Mr.
Yeah. Welcome back, sir. Welcome back. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we are waiting for you only, sir. Your presentation now.
Okay. Sorry, this got disconnected. Screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'll take a very short presentation because most of the points has been already discussed. The future of inland waterways in India and how do we look at an NW5. I'm really thankful to Jain sir for leading this discussion today on the inland waterways, the prospect, and how they are looking at, IWI is looking at to Odisha also. In fact, I will show as an engineer, I'll showcase one of the development or the infrastructure development that has been happened on NW1 and how does it look like sir has already mentioned, land acquisition is a big issue and everywhere, wherever there is development work is going on. So just to give an idea, what kind of development does it look like? I'll showcase NW1 in Haldia and Farakka, which is Jain sir is also the project director for JNVP, under which these two projects are being going on. So before that, my presentation is totally divided into 4 parts. Waterways and its allied infrastructure. This has already been spoken by a lot of the experts in the morning. And then the National Waterway NW1, how does it look like and how does it connect and what is the probable developments that are going to happen on NW1. Then we will talk about NW5, which is in Odisha, and the way forward and the conclusion. This is how the presentation is divided. So we have already spoken about India has around 14,500 kilometers of navigational waterway, out of which only 1 or 2% of the freight is being now carried in India in inland waterways. Whereas if we compare Bangladesh and Germany, even Bangladesh being a developing country has more than 35% of cargoes and passenger being transported in inland waterways. And in developed countries, Germany also contributes around 20% of their transportation in inland waterways. So in India, we have to look into how things can develop in the inland waterways. And for in NW1 in Ganga, which starts from Haldia on the Haldia in West Bengal and goes up to Varanasi, there's around 1,620 kilometers of inland waterways. It passes through 4 states, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Bihar, and UP. And as we know, the inland waterways cost in the logistic cost in inland waterways is the list. 0.79 or 80 paisa, almost 80 paisa in railways in bulk in movement in rack movement in railways is 1.36 rupees, whereas in highways it is 2.5. But as we know that the construction of highways is faster and technology has come into India, so fast movement, so a lot of road network is being developed easily rather than preferring a cost where in inland waterways where the cost is less. But the key benefits would be the least cost, a reduction in pollution, and the cost per ton per kilometer transportation will be less than the road and rail, where we can compete with the international market in terms of the logistic expense that we are doing in the bulk cargos or in mine and coal and mine sector. So this is the whole network of inland waterway network in India, the 111 network, which covers around 5,200 kilometer. NW1, NW2 is in active active movement, whereas NW3, 4, and 5 are in the pipeline to be built in a very short time. So these are the challenges. Water flow is a challenge. Siltation is a challenge. These are all been covered by Jayant sir today in the morning. I'll not take into this here. So this is also been covered by Jayant sir. The total transportation of iron ore, percentage of iron ores and coal contributes almost 70%, whereas the other construction material, limestone, steel, and other things only contributes around 20% of the total transportation in inland waterways now. So this is the intervention or the development plan that needs to be done. We also spoke in the morning on the fairway development. Santosh sir has also contributed, has also said something, advised something on the fairway development. So in fairway development, the dredging is the important thing. River training, conservation works, bandling, and river marking, bank protection. These are the works that needs to be done in any of the inland waterways that has been proposed or is being proposed or planned. So navigational aid, installation of navigational aid like buoys, river information system. These are important technological intervention which has started now. So in NW1 also river information system has been installed. Placing of DGPS systems and beacon lights also in the river, in the navigational aids. Terminal development, as already we have seen, there are a lot of different types of terminals. One is the multimodal transport terminal, then the intermodal terminal IMTs, and the RoRo facilities. So RoRo is a facility which is across the river, as we have mentioned in the morning also we were trying to find. We discussed on the RoRo movement, which is like roll-on, roll-off movement. Multimodal terminal, IWI has already created one multimodal terminal at Haldia. I'll showcase that as one in my presentation also. The other riverian structures, the construction of navigation lock, ship repairing facilities, bunking stations. So these are the other riverian structures which needs to be constructed on the river. Then the vessel operation, vessel design, and the pilot runs. So these are the 5 components which is needed for any kind of an inland waterway infrastructure to be developed in any state. So as today in the morning also, Jayant sir explained on the Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan corridor, which Government of India is planning. In fact, we are very close to this grid. They have mentioned it as an eastern grid, which will connect Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, India, and northeast states of India also. So with this, we can also propose Odisha NW5 can be connected, which is very near, with which the transport of iron ore, coal, fly ash can also be transported to all these countries in this eastern grid. So this is a case study. This is a case study where on NW1, which is already in progress, most of the terminal buildings has already been done. This is the 1,600 kilometer. If you see the map, this is NW on Ganga, which connects up to Haldia. This is the whole length of the river Ganga from Allahabad. It comes to Sahibganj. From Sahibganj, then it comes to Hooghly. From down Farakka, it comes to via a canal system, and then to Hooghly River, and then to Haldia. So this is the whole the river network and the different depths in which the river is there, the Ganga is there, that has been mentioned. You can see in Varanasi we have one multimodal transport hub is there. terminal is there. In Sahibganj also, one development has already been done. And similarly in Haldia and Farakka also. In Haldia, there is one more multimodal terminal has already been constructed. So Varanasi and Sahibganj is almost complete. And even in Haldia is also almost complete also. So I'll show you how this looks like. This is the Haldia multimodal transport hub, transport terminal. So we have 4 jetties for the bulk cargoes and for the for fly ash, which is connected with a conveyor trestle and an approach trestle to the land side. The red part that you see, this part is within Ganga, which is around 130 meters from the banks of Ganga. And this development is on the land side, which has a lot of storage areas. We have silos for drum silos for fly ash and food grains to be stored, as well as we have containers for the oil and the hydrocarbons to be stored here. So this is how the terminal area looked like in 2017 on the onto my left screen. If you can see, it is a greenery area. Now this is how it looks like in 2022. This is all developed. You can see the riverside development as I mark in red. This is the jetties which has already been constructed, connected with 4 approach trestle and 1 conveyor trestle. The line which is there between both the trestles are the approach, the conveyor trestles, which connects to the silos also. So this is how the site looks like. The development, you can see the offshore area development, the 4 jetties along with the conveyor trestle is also is connected. So we have the all material handling system also installed at the site. This is a few of the slides together, which will show you how the development of the riverside has been developed. This is from the initial days when the piling had started. You can see the piling, the pile work going on in the riverside. The 4 of the trestles which is within the river. These are the piles which was constructed. These are the cross girder beams which has been constructed on top of the piles within Ganga. These are the cross girder beams on which, after which, you can see on the right side also the slabs has been casted. So this is the final image. This is how it looks like now. You can see the material handling system, which is also a very modern material handling system with telescopic chutes in it. And this is how it looks like in Haldia on Ganga as of now. These are the development which happened on the river side. And the next slide, I'll show you the development or the storage areas which has been developed on the land side. This is on a 63 acres of land. This is how it looked like in the initial. These are the silo. 8 silos has been constructed on this in this area for fly ash and food grain storage facilities. These are the initial columns of the silos. This is how it looked like. There is a connecting trestle also, and the internal development that has happened there in Haldia. So I'll also take you to Farakka. Farakka is a very typical infrastructure, as we spoke about the navigation lock. This is not a jetty, this is a navigation lock to maneuver these vessels from upstream to downstream where there is a water table difference is there. So this is how the lock, the plan. There is an existing lock. This is now approachable. You can see on the screen I'm marking in red. The green portion is the new navigation lock, which is around 250 meter by 50 meter width. So these are the pictures of the navigation lock. The length is around 250 meter. The width is around 25 meter, and the height of these walls are around 14 meter. You can see this these walls. Then these are the Kaisen gates, the gates to control the water inflow and outflow. The counterfort walls you see, these are around 14-meter height counterfort walls to retain in the channels. This is how it looked like in the starting, and you can see the development. This is almost 80% work is complete. This is still in progress. These are the rafts. The large rafts are the floor of the channel. This construction has also been done on piles only. These are the mitre gates, Kaisen gates and the mitre gates. These are the gates. These are all hydromechanical components installed in it for easy movement of these gates. You can see the gates installed here. These red one, the blue ones are the gates. So now I'll speak about NW5. Most of this has been spoken by Jayant sir, and the future plans that he has already shown. And even my colleague Annie Srivastav has already spoken about it. Only thing that I want to address is, in fact, Jayant sir has in the initial plan has suggested from Paradip and Dhamra side. But in fact, the potential of traffic that is moving from Talchat to up to Jajpur or the Jokaria, there is a lot of traffic here. Definitely, the obstacles are there. But NHI bridges, which is new bridges has been constructed as per the navigational IWA navigational rules and principles. And in fact, in one of the reports also it says if the horizontal clearance of the existing bridges are varying from 32 meter to 50 meter. So in case with slow moving of the vessels, if this can be maneuvered, I think there is a lot of potential which can be started from the upside, Talcher side also. So these are all spoken, have already discussed these points we have already discussed. As per my suggestion, we had shown the red one to be phase 1 and the yellow to be phase 2, and then connecting Paradip and Dhamra. In fact, there is one more port, which is Subarnakha port is again coming on above onto the north side of Dhamra. Most probably the East Coast Canal can connect that in future as a third phase connectivity. So these are the interventions which needs to be done: bank raising, protection measures, bridges. As already mentioned, 5 bridges are already there. The horizontal clearance of the existing bridges around 33 meter to 52 meter. So this can also be looked into. And as per the classification of waterways, NW5 is class 3, which will have barges of around 500 tons with a vertical clearance of 7 meter. So this needs to be again checked onto how this can be done. So these are few of the conclusions and the policy, how the policy, in fact, the policy was also discussed by Jayant sir today in the morning. So there is a need for policy change in both in state level in terms of industrialization and in the transportation sector, creating a lot of dedicated corridors and having the last minute connectivity between the ports and the riverian ports and the sea ports also. So way forward, intervention of in IWI for dredging facility and improving the existing waterway, consultation with various stakeholders. A lot of the stakeholders are there as our delegates today in the meeting today. So they are also listening to us from the morning. And large-scale industry and mining areas to ascertain the further traffic on the proposed sector. So a latest traffic study needs to be ascertained to actually evaluate the quantum of volume of traffic which is generated as of now. So setting of PIU to facilitate project proposals and technical requirement of the project, because there are a lot of land acquisition, environment clearance, and as well as wildlife clearance needs to be taken up on this stretch. So setting up a PIU would facilitate all this project clearances. If we are planning in 3 to 5 years, this projects would be functional. So initial land acquisition and other required clearance from Water Resources Department and other state departments, EIA and SIS study for the project areas to be also carried out immediately. Thank you. This is all about the presentation for today.
So,
thank you very much.
Rajesh, you can also ask if anyone has any questions, or we can just close this.
So, can I have
I think Mr. Dr. Sasi Bhushan, he raised his hand. Dr. Sasi, if you want to ask anything.
Can you give them access?
Yes.
I promoted him to panelist.
Yeah, is he there? Because, hello, Dr. Sasi, are you there? Let's see if any other questions are there.
I think there is a question by Aditya.
Yeah.
Mr. Aditya, construction of multimodal transport at Pankpala, Odisha, mode of implementation planned is on PPP mode or EPC mode. Is the project is planned for the funding via multilateral development banks? Jan sir, I think Jan sir is online, but he's unable to.
I think he's on another meeting.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay. I'll take this. Yeah, Mr. Aditya, actually, the project is in the feasibility stage right now. So as the project proceeds, we will try to find out if it is viable, because the initial report says there is an IRR of around 30%, which is more than viable for any of the BOT operator to operate this terminals. But as the project goes into a DPR stage and the financial modeling is done, will be more clear on whether we are going for a external funding or by funding by EPC or a BOT model. That will look into that. Any other question you can put on the chat?
I think you can close the session now.
Yes. Shall I close it, or sir, you'll give the...
Sorry. Okay. Thank you very much, Rajesh, and Mr. Pankaj Satija, and of course, Annie. And we would, of course, look forward to having Mr. Shah. I think what is important is when Mr. Jayant Singh is planning to come to Bhubaneswar, if we can coordinate and ensure that not only the state government officials meeting is facilitated, and his visit is also facilitated, but also RITE should have a direct interaction there with whatever data you have collected, because what presentation you actually made, Annie, was already available with Inland Water. We have to give them data as to what is available, what are the customer details, I mean, all the other levels, and what are we planning, right?
Definitely.
So that interaction is necessary. So
yes.
I'm sure that we will coordinate that, and Rajesh, we will need your intervention there to ensure that that coordination is done. And Jyoti, of course, the team of ICC Orissa are doing a great job. Keep it going, Jyoti and team.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, before we sign out, I think Rajesh sir, there is a question from Pradipta Panigrahi, sir, from our committee.
Yeah, I saw.
He is there, the integrating
Okay.
floating solar power.
Definitely, Mr. Pradipta, we'll look into this. We know you are very keen on the power sector, solar power. We'll have these options of integrating solar power system. In fact, in Haldia, we have already implemented 5 megawatt of power sourcing in Haldia. We'll have this kind of grid initiative in the complexes that will be developed.
Great. Thank you, sir. I think we have another one from Mr. Bhupesh Mohan. Do we have any projects connecting national-wide inland waterways transport between states in India?
In fact, we have, like I mentioned, NW1. NW1 passes through 4 states right now. Starts from West Bengal, then Jharkhand, then Bihar, and then UP. In fact, yesterday there was one transport of one steel container which was transported from Haldia to Dhubri. So Dhubri is in Assam, Haldia is in West Bengal. So there are in NW1 and NW2 there has been intermodal transportation or movement of goods and has already taken place. And in fact, the eastern grid which will come up will help in connecting all these Eastern India states, northeast states, as well as Bhutan, Bangladesh. It will have an inter-country movement also. So these are protocol routes which has already been identified, and MOU has been signed between Government of India and the neighboring countries also.
Great, sir. I think we covered, sir, all.
Good. Thank you, everybody. And that is nice. And of course, we thank everyone who really participated and look forward to the next course of action. A follow up on this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you, Sharmila.
Yes, sir. Sharmila, Pradeep, and everyone, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.